Welcome to Renewed and Radiant, the faith-based wellness podcast for women over 40 who are ready to elevate their health, their mindset, and their spirit. I'm your host, Elsa Martin, functional nutritionist specializing in women's hormone health. I'll be guiding you to live boldly, age gracefully, and walk fully into your God-given power. Here you'll find faith-fueled, based on science, strategies for your health, spiritual renewal, and holistic living. Because this chapter of your life isn't about slowing down. It's about rising together, rising higher. Each week, we're going to work on renewing your mind, strengthening your body, and reviving your spirit, all through the lens of divine wellness. You are not called to fade. You are called to shine. This is Renewed and Radiant, where faith renews, wellness restores, and you rise radiant to design the life that you love. Okay, we are ready for a good episode today. This is going to be very interesting. So today I have Dr. Cory Potter with me. He lives in Virginia with his wife of 32 years. Big accomplishment. Almost the same as me. We're 33, my husband and I. He loves kayaking, reading, watching sports, and being in nature. Cory has earned a master's in professional counseling, a master of divinity, and a doctorate of education in curriculum and instruction. So he's very well educated. You may want to listen to this. He is trained Christian-based counselor and ordained pastor who has counseled families and individuals in multiple settings, both inside and outside of the church. He started his podcast, Mind and Faith Matters, in the spring this year. His podcast is described as a safe spot to explore mental health, faith, and all the in-between. And that is really the reason why I asked Dr. Cory Potter to be with us today, is because I know he has so much wisdom to share. So thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Cory. I want to hear your real and raw story. What got you from where you were to where you currently are?
Wow. Okay. Well, a little bit about the education, and some people might call it a lot of education, or that I was just seeking a lot of degrees to have them up on the wall. But the reality is, I was born with a condition where I have weak legs. And so I wear leg braces. And that matters because my dad, on the other hand, was a factory worker. And I lost him in the spring this year, but he was always my biggest fan and my biggest mentor. And he would say to me, Cory, you don't want to do the physical stuff that I do all day long and be on your feet. You're smart, focus on your brain, and manage people or something where you can sit behind a desk. And that stuck with me from elementary school through middle school and high school. And so I get out in the world, and what do? I choose a career, and I didn't listen to my dad. I went to school originally. My bachelor's is in orthotics and prosthetics. I designed braces and artificial limbs because that was close to me. I enjoyed the psychological aspects of people with their injuries and or disabilities, and I could relate. So I did that. But when I got married, right before I started my job, and then a little bit later, we started having kids, I was thinking, I'm exposed to a lot of chemicals. I'm tired at the end of the night. I'm exposed to, people's diseases in the hospital all the time. And I wanted my kids to be healthy. So there was part of me that said, Dad, you were right. But because I'm challenged in that way with the leg braces, I just mean I have to navigate the world differently. I simply did not take no for an answer. So let me explain what I mean by that. The world couldn't tell me I was different. The world couldn't tell me, my disability made me bad. I was very confident as a kid growing up. And that went on into college. I was just confident about being a handicapped guy in the world. However, to college and now in the workforce, I do realize people look at you differently. And I don't think anything differently, meaning I still am confident in myself. And I simply just note that the world can judge. But I kind of grounded myself early on before I got out in the world with some faith, not a whole lot. That's why I went to seminary, because when I felt God called me to pastor later on in life, I was like, we weren't raised in a spiritual family. So I went and got that degree so I could learn about the Bible. But I knew certain things. I knew that I was made in God's image. Genesis tells us that. I knew that I was wonderfully made. That's somewhere in the Psalms. I think 139, something like that, if you're keeping track. But I also knew that God looks at the inside, and that's what I chose to do when I see people, actually, because all that together means I am empathetic, I love people, and I needed to use my mind a lot. So I get out in the business world after I did this orthotics and prosthetics thing. I ended up being in banking as a director of marketing in my 20s. And that was weird because the CEO just said, "Follow me." When I told him, "I don't know what we're doing here," I was honest with him. He said, "You're a quick study and you'll figure things out." So I get into the banking world. Fast forward, I get into the mortgage industry, and I ended up owning my own mortgage company for a time. So I was in the business world, and I missed patient care. I missed helping people. So I went back to school, got my counseling degree. And then as soon as I was done, I was thinking, I'm done. I even said to Sue, my wife, I'm done. And she's like, great. Well, within about 6 months, I felt like I was needing to answer the call to pastor, even though I ignored it a little bit. And I went on for more schooling. And I ended up getting into higher ed. That's where I'm at now. Like, I make my living in higher ed. Basically, I work for a university. And I was pastoring, and all of a sudden, I had some health issues about 5 years ago. And those health issues related to my back. I needed a back fusion. And then another condition where I ended up needing to have a little bit of minor brain surgery, as they call it. But it's no brain surgery is minor. And I didn't have the stamina to keep on pastoring because it takes a lot to be available to families in the evening, counsel, marry. I love performing the ceremonies of marriage, and I don't even mind the funerals. It takes a lot out, hospital visits, and simply put, I was, for lack of a better description, I was just really tired at the end of my day, and I just didn't have enough energy or stamina. And it's interesting because when I read about you and what you do for people, some of my story is about trying to regain enough energy to do the things I love. And this is not about my disability. This is just about my health related to it. And so I'm going to go in the direction of over time. So I'm going to back up now and tell you a few things. When I was in middle school, I got really chunky. And as a boy, I was more self conscious about being a chunky little boy than I was being a handicapped person. Because even though I still understand the same things about how God designed me and that God loved me, I think it was young Cory struggling with body image issues as a guy, not a just as a human, but as a guy, you don't think that we do as much as maybe the ladies do. And part of that was driven by the desire to have girlfriends in high school. I mean, I got to be honest, not girlfriends now. I'm happily married, but girlfriends back in high school. And so I learned how to, with my disability, just take the next step. And then my why was a little shallow. It was to look, looking great is not shallow, but I'm saying it wasn't as much for the health of it. It was just so that I could have a girlfriend. But over time, my family I come from shorter, um, stockier women and tall, chubby men. I mean, we just have like our genes, our genetic coding has a little bit of weight on it. And so while I was going through my medical issues, like I said, 5 years ago or so, I had put on a lot of weight and was laying around a lot because of two surgeries within 6 months of each other. And so it's not a tragic story. Because of my disability, because of my drive to do whatever I want to overcome, I couldn't exercise as much, but I learned to take each day and eat a little bit less. I'm not talking about starvation. I'm talking maybe about a little bit of a calorie deficit from, extra calories, but I wasn't going crazy with it. I was being healthy. And I started watching a little bit more of the types of food that I ate. And as I would get exercise even if it was in a wheelchair. And ultimately, I dropped 52 pounds. And just
Congratulations.
thank,
Congratulations. That's amazing. Yeah, congratulations.
thank you. And so now it's a thing of I have a grandson. I am older than I was when I was in my 20s. And so those things combined, I want to be healthy and I want to have a healthy lifestyle, even though I have a busy lifestyle. So I'm still watching what I eat. I still do exercise and get that outdoor exercise. I used to go to the gym, but it just doesn't work in my schedule. So I have to do alternative ways of getting that heart rate up. And so earlier this year, I wasn't laying around or anything, but I was praying through what do I need to do so that I could just fulfill what I felt my purpose was and still help people, still give positive mental health and true, raw, authentic mental health knowledge and encouragement to people and use my faith and my faith training and my biblical training to help people. And that's where I landed on the podcast. And I prayed about it and I felt a confirmation that this is what I was to do. So I've been enjoying the fruits of all that and just having a great time over these past so many months. So that's where I got to where I am today.
That is amazing. I mean, I always say that God will use our journey to take us to our destiny if we let Him. And look at how, through all of this, you were doing what you felt like God wanted you to do. And look at where you are today. Now you're helping people with their mental health with such an important topic, and especially faith led with their mental health. You know, there's so much information out there, and it's just so hard to know. But when it's faith based and you're using the Bible as one of your resources, you know that it's going to be on track, and it goes along with how we were designed to live and how our mental health is designed for, not just some random what somebody else thinks. Cory, I am loving this conversation. This is so good. I'm already getting so many takeaways. Like, for one thing, you could have used that as an excuse for sure, right? And we all have things that we could use as excuses. Or you can say, no, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to do what I need to do to get me to where I want to be, in spite of this, or using this to help me, whatever that is. So don't let excuses stop you. Everybody has something, that they could use as an excuse. So number one, don't let excuses stop you from doing what you feel you're supposed to be doing, or that you're passionate about, or that you're called to. And then the other thing is to, focus, but we can be doing one thing, be open to a shift if there's a shift that needs to come, right? Like, look at how you've transitioned over the years, and, didn't maybe necessarily take your dad's advice right off at the start, because who of us do?
Right, right.
Start right when we're that age, but, transitioning as you went through life, and now here you are doing what you're doing, which is a very important and powerful work.
Yes, I'll say this, a couple of things about that. I was in the classroom when I first began my higher education career, and I found that over time, we all don't have the same intrinsic motivation, and it's okay to get encouragement from other people that are there for you. So, getting a coach, getting a nutritionist, getting someone around you that's going to encourage you has always been something that I've been driven to be that for others. And so I like encouraging other people. And my students, I could tell if they weren't giving effort. And I would talk with them and say, why did you come to school? And they would say, well, someone else wanted me to, or something else was happening. And at first, some of them might say, I just want to make the big bucks. I want to make more money. And that is motivation sometimes for people, but it seems so far off that they can lose sight of it as young students. And I would just keep them on track because I taught life skills to students in their freshman year. And I would always talk about this day, what are you going to do to work on figuring out who you are and why you want the next thing? What I meant by that, they would say, well, I want to go and I want to do this. And I would say, that seems pretty far off. What do you have to do now? And they might tell me a few things. And I would say, what's going to be the one thing that stops you from doing this? Be honest with me. Let me know what is that one thing that's your Achilles heel. I wouldn't say that, but the thing that's going to hold them back. And sometimes they would say it's this or it's that. And maybe it was substance like smoking some marijuana or something, and they knew that it kept them unmotivated, and they knew that it wasn't helping them with their studies, let's put it that way. Or it would be some other thing like a block, maybe they don't test well. And so then we would back it up and say, what is it that you could do to become a better tester? And we ultimately would realize they didn't study the game. And I'm a big student in life. And so when I've done different things over my life, like I say, I wear leg braces. But so if you want to do athletic things like marathons, you're probably not going to. I mean, some people would inspire others by walking in their braces for 26.2 miles. Not me. So I got a racing wheelchair and trained and did some marathons. I did 3 full marathons and a half marathon over
Wow.
time. This was years ago, but I studied, and I would say, what's going to stop me? Okay, I don't have the right nutrition. I'm not getting enough sleep. I don't have the endurance. And so then I would say, how do I get endurance? Well, you just go at it each day. And so no matter what it is, if it's exercise, if it's learning something, if it's trying for a goal in business, it's always to me about breaking it down to the smaller steps, looking what's going to derail you and finding the help, finding the way to get over it. And my faith truly over time has allowed me to not get discouraged when I was on my back for 6 months at a time. There's been times where I knew it was going to be, well, I don't want to be negative, but at sometimes I thought, well, this might be the end, but I'm not going to go out being negative about it. And
Mm.
so I was confident in what I knew of my relationship with God. And other times it would be, I know this is temporary. I'm going to get through this. There's going to be a better tomorrow. And I could keep a very positive mental attitude. But it wasn't just me. I mean, I grew weary, but I never blamed God for it because I do understand that this world, God's not forcing the negative stuff that happens on people. Sometimes it's the evil in the world, other times it's the fact that because we're fallen and we're not perfect and we choose other than God, there's consequences of it. And so I never blame God for some of these things that have happened to me. And that's my message to others. Even if someone's going through some really serious mental health struggles, I want them to know, God's not trying to inflict anything on them. And I also want them to know that it's okay to feel a little bit broken or a lot broken or totally broken. We don't have to put on a brave face all the time. And God will meet us in those weary times and broken times, and we can trust him. And so I don't think that that's everything, but that's the main messages that I've carried along with me in my life.
Oh, that's so, so good because we can get in that where we get into our own heads. Even if you technically have been diagnosed or not, we can just get into our own heads and just go down that pathway, and it can just lead us so far from, really who we're called to be, and feel like we can't share that with somebody else, or that we are alone and nobody else is going to understand. But the thing is, it's amazing when you open up conversations with people that you trust, how that can really shift things, and they can help you have a new perspective, or they can have empathy with you, and not trying to just bottle it up and keep it to ourselves, but really opening up to people and getting the help that we need to get when that's needed too is so important.
Yes, I sometimes feel like because I'm very internally motivated that I have the danger of projecting that onto other people and think, well, why aren't you motivated or why aren't you doing this? But I don't know people's story. And so I've become a great listener over time to understand maybe what's holding someone back, whether it's mental or sometimes physical. And I tend to sense when it's spiritual as well. But on top of that, that's why this conversation is so healthy, I think, for both of our audiences and listeners and people who follow us, that we can't isolate our mental health from our spiritual and or essence of who we are. We can't separate that from our physical selves. And so this whole balanced life really matters to me, getting enough sleep, because if I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm not letting my body repair, and I'm not preparing myself for the next day. And so that balance in life of how I eat, do I get my rest? Do I give myself downtime? And even time to unwind mentally and be still before God. And I've done some episodes on why is it so hard to be still before God? And the truth of the matter is, some of us think being still before God means the same thing that my mom used to say at the dinner table, like, you need to sit still and eat that Salisbury steak or whatever it was. But that isn't exactly what it is. It just is this posture or position of being available and listening to God and trusting him and being open to communication with him and not hiding from him. And so I really believe that a balanced life has everything to do with what we put in to our eyes, our ears, our mouth, and what how we process it, and then what we're going to do, what action steps we're going to take at the other side of that.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with that. And back to the whole the gut brain connection. There's such a connection between what we eat and what goes on with our mental health. And that's a huge factor as well.
Yes. So when I went through my counseling degree, we studied human behavior and developmental psychology and abnormal psychology and counseling techniques. The neuroscience probably was available, but it's advanced so much and they know so much about their neural networks and what's happening more so than they used to. And when you're falling asleep at night and you can't get to sleep because you have a lot of stuff on your mind and your brain's trying to process so much, a lot of times we just try to, count sheep, suppress it, eat a snack, or do something else, calling it what it is and stopping and saying, this is just me putting this memory or putting this experience into its right place. Or this is something that happened yesterday. I don't need to worry about it. Or I can plan around this. And so this is something I need to file away in my banks for tomorrow and I'll take care of it then. And almost like that dialogue with yourself, just giving yourself okay, my brain's telling me something. And that's the other thing I think we probably have in common. We were built so incredibly that we have these thresholds. So, in a healthy person, if you start eating and your stomach's getting full, you have that sensation of being full. And there's a reason, there's a threshold of how much food, for example, you should put in your stomach at one point. And if you're in a situation that's stressful and you start to feel some anxiety about that, some stress, some nervousness about it, it's your trigger, your system, your body's way of saying, time out, hold on, there's something going on. And sometimes we ignore those thresholds and yours might be different than mine. And we really need to be aware that we're so incredibly made that we have these warning systems built into not just neuroscience, but just the way the body is in general. We need to listen to our bodies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, absolutely. Even when you go back to where you said when you lost the 50 some pounds, you just shifted where you started to listen to your body, stop overeating, you just started to listen to your body and cut back where we didn't need that extra. And the weight naturally comes off when we do that. And so it just shows the importance of mentally, emotionally, but also physically listening to what our body and our mind is telling us. And yeah, it works physically, obviously. I'm a big proponent in my program of teaching ladies how to become intuitive physically to what their body is saying to them, what works for you, what foods aren't working, all of that physically, but also mentally and emotionally. I love how you address that as well, of okay, what's causing this? Oh, here it comes. Okay, what's going on? What needs to be healed, or what process do we need to go through? What's this telling me? And I say the body, but also we're talking about mental health too. Obviously, the mind as well whispers, and it whispers and whispers and whispers until it has to get louder and louder and louder until pretty soon it's shouting or screaming at us, and that we actually have to do something with it. So if we can train ourselves to become aware of those whispers before they get out of control, and heal when our body and
yeah.
minds are whispering to us.
And it's funny because that kind of circles back to what I was saying, having the right people around you to encourage you. We can learn to misread the whispers when we get stressed, for example. And that's why some people in a stressful time or situation can down a whole row of Oreos, whereas someone else, their body says, "Ooh, I don't want to eat right now," and so they're not giving themselves nutrition at all. And so not only do we need to listen to those whispers, but we need to make sure they're the in line whispers with what healthy living might look like. And that's why sometimes we do need a coach. I, interestingly enough, worked at a historically black college and university, an HBCU is what it's called in the United States. And when I worked there, I found that because I was a pastor and that my students would learn that, they would come to me and want healthy advice and want to talk to me more so than if I ever was just their professor or a counselor. And they would explain to me, this is not me trying to stereotype a certain kind of person, but multiple people said culturally, getting counseling or mental health help or therapy wasn't as accepted as talking to someone in the church. The great thing about the Word of God is the Word of God hasn't changed over time, and God hasn't changed over time. And so that foundational truth that we spoke about at the very beginning just gives me that peace of mind to know who we are and how God sees us and that he does love us and wants the best for us. And so by extension, that's who I want to be for the people around me and that's who I want in my life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's incredible. I love that. This is such a great conversation. The whole picture of it, mental health, but with the biblical base, the true solid foundation. So we can look everywhere else, but that's where we come back to all the time, and that's really where we're going to get the true answers. So I love that you base your wisdom off of that. That's so good. Okay, Cory, if someone that's listening and they said, okay, this is resonating with me. Yes, I see myself in some things that you're sharing today. What is one practical step that they could take today to help them move towards a goal that they would desire to reach?
I certainly don't want to repeat myself, but I really do think looking at what you're trying to achieve and breaking it down into smaller steps so that it may not feel as overwhelming to them. And so a lot of times we can build momentum on one success and then another success and on down the line till we get to that ultimate end goal. On top of that, I would say not getting discouraged if you don't meet one of those smaller steps. Maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and be a little bit flexible about it and find another path, another route. And I think you can hear it in my story, hopefully, that if I want to help people and I think helping people is doing it this way, but then my health doesn't let me do that, I'm going to find another way to do it. And for me, it's prayerfully. It's not just about a bunch of reading books or reading on the internet. It's really about listening, A, to my body, and B, to God, and figuring it out. So I'd say small steps. And the other thing, and I think you and I spoke about this not during this episode, but when we've spoken, I think you need to know your why. You have to know your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And the more I don't mean important, but the more meaningful it is to you and significant it is to you, it allows you to develop that motivation to go on to the next. If someone's telling you, you should do this, you need to do this, and it's not yours, you're not going to be ready to do it, most likely.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I love that. It has to resonate deep within you because if not, you're going to quit. I also
Yeah.
really liked the point that you made, which we don't often hear about that, or at least I don't often hear about it this way, is when you're thinking about what you want to do and your goals, what you're setting yourself up for that you want to reach, think about what is it that's going to stop you or try and stop you. And being prepared for that, I love that, and I'm gonna apply that to my coaching because I love that thinking about, okay, let's think about this. I'm all about meal planning or preparing for the week ahead, and that kind of thing. That's great, but what about planning and thinking about, okay, what is something that could cause me to stumble or stop me from reaching my small goal this week or my big goal, and then let's be prepared. Let's think about how we're going to approach that when it comes up. because we know that that
Yeah.
could be something that could stop us. But knowing how to get over that is huge.
Yeah. So in my classroom, I used to have students watch The Pursuit of Happiness. And so I would teach students these principles about goal setting and overcoming your barriers in goal setting. And then I would have them watch the movie and watch this man who figured it out. My students could then relate to it and say, he did these things to overcome what was his biggest barrier. And so over time, I got to see students could really resonate with that approach to say, I get it now. I see it lived out in someone else's life. Because sometimes if you're just hearing it for the first time, you might get hesitant. But I assure you that that's a powerful technique. I've seen it work.
Ah, I love that. That's so good. And what a good way to teach that.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, Cory, this has been incredible. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know it's been super helpful to many people. So, how can people follow you, get in contact with you? Oh, how can they be helped by you?
Sure. Well, my podcast is broadcast on YouTube. I have a channel and it's Mind and Faith Matters. So if you search that, you'll find the green logo with a tree that's shaped like a brain. You could go to YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, it's broadcast to all of them. And I do have a website, www.mindandfaithmatters.com. And there I do have some supplemental resource guides. I have some other mental health, like online helps that I've found and put there. I have some biblical basics like downloading a Bible app and some questions that I answer. So mindandfaithmatters.com is the website. And then if someone had a question for me, they could email me at mindandfaithmatters@gmail.com. That's how that's set up. Or if they went to the website, they could contact me there. And you can even leave a voicemail on my website. You just click on the little microphone and say, I have a question. It'll send me a transcript of that. And so people can do that anonymously or they can, reach out and ask questions that they do have. I'm
Okay.
on face I'm on Facebook too as Mind and Faith Matters.
Okay, that's excellent. So, Mind and Faith Matters really over any of the platforms. They're very, very informative. So, it's excellent. Well, thank you for being here today, Cory. This has been incredible. And I know that I've learned, and I know our listeners have today too. So, thank you for being here. And I just appreciate your time. And I hope that people will listen to your podcast and learn from all the wisdom that you have as well.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been really, really fun. And anytime that one of your listeners needs some advice, they can come my way if it's not something that you give as part of your training. So I would love to be a resource for your listeners as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if this spoke to you today, make sure that you like, share, comment, send it to a friend that could use this information. And especially with mental health, I feel like it's really important to open up the conversation and let's make it less of a taboo subject. And especially when it's faith-based like this, it's the best combination. So thanks for listening today. Thank you for joining me on Renewed and Radiant. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another woman who's ready to live boldly, beautifully, and in divine alignment. For more faith-based wellness freedom, join me over on Instagram at the Elsa Martin or over on Instagram and Facebook at Whole by Nutrition. Remember, you are not defined by your past or your pace. You are defined by His promise. Stay renewed, stay radiant, and I'll see you in the next episode.